in your packet, Council, and I usually pick on somebody, and I'd pick on Jackie here in a minute, but Stacy's here today, and I just wanted to recognize her efforts and all that she does. If you really look at the items on her report that she puts in there, everything from scheduling and holding a flu shot clinic for our staff and employees, to being a notary, to RDA loan disbursements, to managing our payroll, employee recognition, doing our financial reporting, taking care of accounts payable. She does a lot of work, and since she's here tonight, I thought I'd point that out. Appreciate her and appreciate all the staff. You see several of them here today. The mayor pointed out our Veterans Day ceremony, which was very nice. There's a lot of effort that goes in that from Chris Stone and Rich Taylor, the fire department and the police department, public works, everybody just is hands on deck. And then lastly, my comments to Jackie for her CMC award and all that work that goes into there. We challenged her to get that award when we hired her, and she did. It's a lot of work, a lot of travel, a lot of classes. And as Ms. Spenlove just mentioned, it's equivalent to an associate's degree as far as the dedication and hours put in. So I'd like to thank her. I appreciate her. With Lynette retiring, it's just her and me in that office, and it gets a little quiet sometimes, but I know that Jackie is extremely dedicated to what she does. She brings forth ideas and suggestions where, for example, she's gone through our alcohol ordinance and looked at I shouldn't say several, but multiple revisions that we need from state code that's been changed over the years, and our existing city code hasn't kept up to speed on that. And so, that's just one of many. Business licensure, working with the Planning Commission, and of course here with the City Council. Just kudos to her and the support that her family gives to her. Appreciate that. Council, as far as our anniversaries go, we don't have any 5-year anniversaries to recognize this evening, but we do have those employees that I would like to recognize just on the record for the record today. Kirk Favero is our water superintendent in Public Works. He has 21 years, and remember that Kirk suffered a pretty severe leg injury last year. It's good to have him back, and he's back to full speed, but still has some lingering issues with his leg, but we appreciate him being here. Erlene Lee in our court or legal department has 19 years of service, so we'll see her next year at the 20th year. Steve Brooks, our city attorney, has 14 years. Steve's here with us tonight. Joan Daly has 13 years of service also in our court area. Derek Engstrom in the police. I saw Derek yesterday just all happy and smiling, happy and ready for Thanksgiving, he said. He has 8 years of service. Nathan Tracy in our fire department has 6 years. Kelly Skaleski, is that how it's pronounced, Rich? I guess I'm good. She has 2 years. Works out in community services. Jamie Boots, who had time with us and then left for a period of time and is back with us, has 2 years of service. He's in our police department. And then Caleb Casper in our community services has a year of service. Our FTE is below the 2005 staffing authorization plan. We're 2 under that. And then, of course, is our development report that's in front of you. Most of you know about some of these things that are ongoing in the city. Obviously, the Krispy Kreme store is now open for business over on Riverdale Road. The Fifth Avenue Salon, this is over behind the Buffalo Wild Wings in the Crossings building, is open on the 2nd floor, and they're starting to fill those various rooms with different beauticians that work there. Then we've also got some ongoing developments with iMart Express, which is coming into our city. They're over in the Blue Hills Dental building over there by the Del Taco restaurant. The Quack Car Wash is still under review. It's moving forward, albeit slowly. They have some items to take care of before they are on your agenda, probably in December. And then the Best Realty is an ongoing development in the former Johnny's Dairy building. So Verizon also finished their work if you're a Verizon customer. I don't know if you've been in their remodeled store. And then the Good Earth Natural Food Store is, I don't know if it's close, Mike, or that's been a long one, but it's ongoing.
They've got a lot to do inside
They do.
still.
And then, of course, the monthly financial reports for the city RDA agency and the city are in your packets. As you noticed in the graphs, you can see with the robust economy that Riverdale is experiencing benefits in our sales tax revenues that we see this year. It's probably the most that the city's ever collected in sales tax revenue, which is good. That's all I have, unless council members have a question.
What I asked you about upstairs, where the other half of the building, where the work is going on, can that be announced, or is that?
They have a demolition permit, which was pulled by the contractor. There is a furniture store going in next to the at-home building, which we're excited for, and that will be forthcoming here fairly soon. It's just a tenant finish, so there's really no approval. I don't know if we'll do a design review committee on that one or not, Mike.
There will probably be, yes.
But there, as far as a tenant finish, there wouldn't be any formal approval process for the planning commission or the council on that particular business. But we'll probably see them first part of the year, hopefully.
I had a couple quick questions from Steve's report. Kind of piqued my interest. I work closely with the fire marshal at my work. I was curious about what you're doing there with the job description.
There was some question on maybe changing Randy's title and responsibilities and things like that. I don't know that that's going to go any further, but that's what that whole thing was.
Okay. And senior board, is that anything interesting?
No, that was some stuff. They kind of let things lapse on their corporate stuff. That was one of the first things your dad had me do when I got here, was to establish them as a corporation, things like that, and nobody's watched it over the years, and so they had to redo it. Are they
not too active?
No, I think they're still active. They're just not doing it how they're supposed to be doing it in the corporate world, and so we had to pull some old files and help them out a little bit. I'm not sure where they got with that, Rich. Did they get it done, or?
Last I heard, they had everything submitted.
Okay, so that's what it was. We were just getting them legal,
All right,
so to
just
speak.
curious.
So
That's all I had. Thanks.
yeah.
Anything else on city administration? I just go back to Veterans Day just for a minute. I was going to mention this and I didn't, but Dave Leahy, we appreciate all Dave does. He's a behind-the-scenes guy, and he makes the programs. He does that on his own. He just does that just to help and serve, and does the programs. He makes certificates, thank you cards. He makes them personalized, and for those who participate on the program, just appreciate what he does. He does it every year, and gets those out. We get them out to those who serve and help. But we appreciate Dave. He does a lot. You do a lot, Dave, and we do appreciate it. Appreciate Braden also. He's the MC for that, and always does a fine job. I even hear good comments on that. So move on next to the consent items. Consideration to approve the meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections at this point? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve consent items.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor to approve the minutes. Move on to action item 1. Consideration of resolution 2018-26, amending policy 9-6 for military reserve members. Mrs. Como, our HR lady and our city treasurer.
So I am proposing that we make this change to our military leave policy, just to stay competitive with the other cities and what they're doing. I know we had some discussion about this in the work session, and you're welcome if you have a consensus to amend what's here. Have any questions about what is here already?
Any discussion, comments on Mr. Stevens?
Yes, thank you. In this, it says 15 working days. I would think that we could really amend that to be 120 hours, because unless you define what a workday is it 10 hours? Is it a 24-hour shift? Is it whatever? It's open to interpretation, but that could be resolved by just saying, if we work in the premise of a 40-hour work week, even though the police and fire work in different shifts, but it kind of evens out at 40 hours per week. And instead of saying, work days and without a definition of what a work day is, change that to be 120 hours per, and add the word calendar year, or is this calendar year, or is this the fiscal year?
It would be calendar year,
Okay. Okay.
just because it's payroll. Payrolls, everything's on calendar year.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand. All right. But that's the only thing I would bring up, just for clarity of vice, work day, and what is a work day, without the definition of what a work day is.
I think it's probably important that you mention that I think you and Councilor Arnold both mentioned the federal government has gone to the 120-hour DoD, Department of Defense, for all their employees. A lot of them serve.
It's federal agencies wide. So if it's your Treasury or DoD or Interior or whatever, it's all 120 hours. Now they do it on the fiscal year, but I can see for payroll purposes sticking with the and I would.
It would be easier for me to track it if we did it on
Yes.
the calendar year through payroll.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or discussion on this? Mr. Arnold?
I'd move to approve Resolution 2018-26, amending Policy 96 for military reserve members, with the change that it'd be 120 hours, up to 120 hours based on your calendar year for payroll.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, could we have a roll call on the resolution? Mrs. Manning, please, roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Ellis?
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, move on to action item 2, consideration of a bid award to Landis for the 2019 fireworks show in the amount of $17,000. Mr. Taylor, Community Services Director.
Thank you, Mayor. On October 5th, we put out an RFP for our July 4th, 2019 fireworks show, and we received back 3 proposals. One proposal was lacking the required liability insurance. The other 2 proposals met the requirements that we were seeking. We suggest that we award the bid to Lantis Fireworks. They provided in their proposal an additional 420 mortars than in comparison to the other company, as well as they were going to bring in a flatbed trailer with all of the aerial shots on it. That greatly reduces staff's time spent with the fireworks that day, as well as addresses issues with setup because it comes pre-done on that trailer. And so I don't know if you guys have any questions, but we suggest that we award the bid to Lantis.
Is Sean gonna let you put a big flatbed on the grass over there?
launched right from the trailer, aren't they?
That's the suggestion in the proposal this year. We've never had that done before. They've certainly done it in other locations and other shows. They would still need to put the display cakes on the ground. Those would shoot from the ground, but the aerials would shoot from the trailer. That's what they're proposing.
You like that, Chief? Okay. Sound like a better thing all the way around. Mr. Arnold?
Move to approve the bid award to Atlantis for the 2019 Riverdale Fireworks Show in the amount of $17,000.
Second.
Have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Manning, will you poll the council on the expenditure, please?
Councilmember Ellis,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Unanimous in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Move on to action item number 3, consideration of resolution 2018-27, joint land use agreement between Riverdale City and Hill Air Force Base. Mr. Wortham.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, before you is proposed consideration of a joint land use agreement with Riverdale City and Hill Air Force Base, and also, if you will, the other communities that surround the base. The Office of Economic Adjustment is working with Layton City on a grant that basically would support a joint land use study with the base and these adjacent communities that surround the base. The scope of the study would create a request for a proposal that would then go out and obtain the services for a plan consultant to execute the planning and the public outreach process to develop the plan. Obviously, the proposed plan would provide options to address growth that we see not only on the base, but the impacts of the Air Force Base operations on the surrounding communities here in Davis and Weber County. The RFP basically would have the consultant go out and have those meetings with interested parties or affected entities and discuss ways to address growth and operations of the base, as well as the impacts of community development that surrounds the base upon base operations and viability. So.
Any questions or comments, Mr. Arnold?
I just think we need to make it clear that in the subject it says consideration of the resolution as a joint land use agreement. And the resolution is actually approving a study, just for clarification, because we're not entering into a land use agreement.
It is a study. You're right. No, that's a good point.
Is that a motion?
And I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2018-27 as stated within the resolution of the packet.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Agate? You okay with that, how that's worded? Okay, Mrs. Manning, will you poll the council on the resolution, please?
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember Ellis,
Aye.
Unanimous in favor. Move on to action item number 4, consideration to approve the application process for the Justice Assistant Grant Program. Chief Brinkman.
Thanks, Mayor. This is just an opportunity to obtain some federal funding called JAG grant funding that we've had for 10 plus years. We've applied for these funds up to $3,150. This is a new step in the process where they ask us to come to City Council and get your okay before we submit that application. So that's what we're here to ask for tonight. It's been very beneficial to the city over the years. We've obtained a lot of necessary equipment that has benefited the city and the police department to help us do our job better. So it's a good thing for the city. Any questions or?
Mr. Hanson.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application process for the Justice Assistance Grant Program.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor, Chief. Thank you. At this point, on our agenda, we would go into a closed executive session because of the fact that we have an RDA meeting immediately following, and we have people here for that meeting, and rather than to have them wait through that closed executive session, I would ask for a motion to adjourn into the RDA meeting at this point.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
There's a,
I was gonna have a discretionary comment if that's okay. Are we gonna do that later?
We'll still do that after
I
the
just wanted to
closed.
take the opportunity while Rich is still here, to just say that my kids had a great time at the Halloween thing. You guys did an awesome job. It was really cool. That's all I wanted to say.
No, that's great. Thanks for the thanks. So, sure they appreciate that. It was a great activity and very well done. The Youth City Council does a great job. I have to talk to you about the pumpkin judging sometime, Cody.
Did I screw it up?
No,
That was a lot of pressure.
not any more than I did.
I was nervous.
Yeah, but you did good. Yeah, I'll tell you sometime how that worked out. Not at an open public meeting.
Mayor, I had one other thing just while some of the staff is here. I have one that they don't need to hear for later, but Krispy Kreme participated in a fundraiser for Brent Taylor, and I had something else and wasn't able to go, but the way they did is they just said, stuff is free, and then anything people donate, we'll just give 100% of it to the family. And in my mind, I kind of imagine people going through and getting a donut, and throwing $1 in the thing. Well, I had brothers and a lot of family and just different people that went, and you went through the drive-through and they said, how many dozen donuts can we get you? And you'd get one, and they say, why don't you take two? And they're like, why don't you get some drinks too? Why don't you get a pop and an orange juice and a milk? And I mean, they got their minivans, and they're like, whoa, and so then my brothers were like, well, all I got's like $20, but can you take a credit card for a donation? And they're like, sure, so it was, I don't know if you ever have any contact with them or anyone in the city staff, but it wasn't like, here's your donut, here's the jar, throw $1 in the jar. It was, and I heard from several people, it was like that. And so that's they were just handing out dozens at a time. It wasn't like,
awesome.
yeah, here's your donut. So I was impressed by that. I was like, whoa, that's a pretty big undertaking. So
They donated 10 dozen, right, Rich, for our veterans program. So they've done really good. Yeah, that's great to hear that. So kind of makes you feel like you want to donate it after they give you $1,000 worth of donuts, drinks, and stuff. Okay, welcome you to our RDA meeting this evening. For the record, all board members are present this evening. We have a public comment period. This is an opportunity for you to come forth and address the RDA board, which you're welcome to do. We'd ask you to state your name and probably take not more than about 3 minutes. Time is yours. Seeing none, we'll move on next to the consent items. First we have is consideration to approve the meeting minutes. Any changes or corrections to the October 16th minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, we need ask for a motion on the consent items.
motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor of approving the minutes. Move on next. Action item D, presentation and discussion items. Presentation and discussion regarding the annual 2018 RDA financial report. Mr. Wortham.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you tonight, Councilman, is the annual report for the Riverdale City RDA. This is an annual report that's required by state code. We submit this to our taxing entities and to other interested parties. The state auditor receives one, etc. It's a report of our annual activities within the respective RDAs, projects, boundaries, tax increment that's collected, that sort of thing. We do this each year at the end of the year, obviously, and we're approaching November when it's due. We've requested Cody Hill, who's with Lewis Young Robertson and Birmingham, to be here with us tonight. He's the major author and compiler of the report. Mike Agate and I are involved in a lot of the information that's given to him, and he's with us tonight to, present the report, if you would, Cody, and then if there's any follow-up questions from the council.
Roger, real quick, I did research Mr. Hansen's comment earlier about Mr. Peterson. He is living. He's actually the business administrator and CFO for Weber School District. I think you're confused with Brent Stevenson, who was a board member of the chair who did pass away.
Okay.
So just a point of clarification.
Thanks for that.
Huh?
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Richards.
Cody, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Worthman, and thank you, RDA Board, for your time and for the opportunity to come and present to you. As he said, my name is Cody Hill. I'm an analyst with Lewis Young Robertson Birmingham, and I was a part of putting together your annual redevelopment agency report, which is due annually on November 1st. It's commonly called the November 1st report. Every single municipality or county that has active project areas is required to compile a report and report on different aspects of each project area, how much revenue came in, how much is projected to come in, and what the expenditures were, the types of development, and any concerns that the agency has. So just a quick overview of the agency's 5 project areas. So there are 2 active project areas right now. Active meaning they're actively receiving tax increment revenues each year from the participating taxing entities. And those active project areas are the 1050 West RDA in pink right there at the corner of the I-84 and Riverdale Road, and the 550 West RDA at the other end of the city, also on Riverdale Road. And then there's 2 project areas that have been created but are not yet activated. They haven't been triggered to collect increment yet, and those are the West Bench RDA and the 700 West CDA. And then there's one project area that recently sunset. It recently expired and no longer receives tax increment revenue, but it still has a fund balance and had some activity this year, so we felt it appropriate to include that in the report. So just as an overview of the revenues and expenditures this year, tax year 2017, fiscal year 2018, the agency's revenues were almost 580,000, and those came from the 2 active project areas, as I said before, 1050 West and 550 West. And it is estimated till the end of their lives that you'll receive another $2.3 million from those 2 project areas. And the expenses are almost $30,000 in RDA administration expenses, developer payments of $250,000, and that's actually just the 550 West that's making payments to developers. They're reimbursing River Center IV LLC for infrastructure and utility work that they had done, and other redevelopment activities, $233,000, affordable housing, $67,000, and then the revenues match the expenditures. So $579,000 this year, and then $2.3 million over the life of the 2 project areas. So looking specifically at each project area, so 1050 West, big things to note here are just the remaining life, that this project area has 3 more years in which it will receive tax increment revenue before it sunsets. And it is the top left, the acreage. It's been around for 22 years, and the main purpose is commercial development, to promote commercial development in that area. And it's been very successful. There's 28.4 acres, and of that, only 0.6 acres are not developed. So this project area is mostly built out and been a force for development in that area. And then kind of as connected with that idea is that there hasn't been that much development activity in this area, mostly because it is mostly completely developed. Target did renovate its building, adding a Starbucks cafe to its building, and which added to the incremental value of the project area. And you'll also see that this year, if I can, here we go. So you can see that this year, not very much growth, 0.7%, compared to the growth of the city over the same period, 13.7%. But over the whole life of the project area, you see 28% growth on an average annual basis versus 3.5%. So that the growth of this project area is well advanced beyond that of the city, just typically. And then the other project area that's active is the 550 West RDA. Again, note that there's 5 years remaining in this project area, and then it will sunset and no longer receive tax increment revenues. And it's also had a lot of growth as well. The development acreage is 33.1 developed acres out of the 46.7 acres of the project area. And the increase over the base year value, the base year value is 8.8 million, and the tax year 2017 value is 36.8 million, so a 318% increase in value over the base year. And although the main purpose of this project area, the 550 West project area, is to promote commercial development, most recently, the majority of the growth has been residential. So the Green Hill at Riverdale Apartments, they have received approval and begun construction on 30 new units. And in addition to that, all of their existing units are being renovated, and they're making improvements there. And just to show kind of the highlights, so only 12% of the project area is made up of residential improvements. So 12% of the acreage is residential, and that's 104 units. And then just like with the other RDA, you see that this one has grown at a 12% average annual rate over its life versus the average annual growth of the city's assessed value, and that's 4.9%. And I'm going to report on the 3 other project areas, the 2 that are inactive and the 1 which has sunset. So the West Bench project area, it must trigger, according to its governing documents, the plan and the budget, must trigger by 2020. It has not triggered yet. It was created in 2005. And this project area is really interesting. It has a cap of $9 million. And I say it's interesting in that there is 0 of the budget allocated to administrative, and 0 of the budget is allocated to affordable housing. They received an exemption from the Olene Walker Fund. So 100% of the tax increment revenues is going towards infrastructure improvements. There's a high voltage power line going through this project area, and the goal with that, the majority of that revenue is going to be to relocate those high voltage power lines to an area still within the project area, though, that's more conducive to growth and development. The TEC approved the budget in 2012, and the budget estimates a 500% increase in property tax revenues to the taxing entities after this project has been triggered, lived its life, and then sunset. So a great benefit to the taxing entities once it gets off the ground. The 700 West project area, it also is been created but is not yet active. The reason for that is mostly just because there hasn't been an agreement yet made with the school district as to the terms of their participation. Actually, this year, so it was created in 2016. This year, there's been amendments made whereby the school district, you'll see here the terms. The school district is actually the only entity that would participate 15 years at 50%, and then the other taxing entities would participate 20 years at 70%. And the total budget is estimated at $2.2 million. And the majority of that is going to go towards infrastructure improvements and other redevelopment activities, with about $111,000 for project just administration. And then the final project area is the Riverdale Road, which sunset in 2017. It had a fund balance, however, and activity this year within the project area. So land was sold within that project area to, actually, you just mentioned them, Krispy Kreme. And they put in infrastructure improvements and then received reimbursement for those infrastructure improvement from this, the remaining fund balance from this project area. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to address them. Our review found that the agency is meeting all of its obligations and doing a very good job in promoting growth and development and adhering to the terms of the project area budgets and plans which govern them.
Any questions, Cody?
I just need some clarification on the West Bench trigger date. I'll tell you how I understand it, and then you can tell me if I'm correct. So during the summer of 2019, we'll be creating a budget for the tax year 2020. So as I understand it, we will need to create a budget at that time that makes requests for tax increments for tax year 2020 in order to trigger that. Is that correct?
That is correct if the agency decides to trigger it. If it looks like it would be more beneficial to go back to the taxing entities.
Right,
and
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, which I mean, we're 7 months away from that. What are we doing to prepare for negotiating an extension on that trigger date?
At this point, we haven't reached out to the taxing entities, Cody, to extend that time frame, which certainly could be done.
Okay.
And it more than likely probably would be a wise idea to at least
Well,
notify
I
them.
just feel like the work we're doing on 700 doesn't sound like they'd be that interested in maintaining a 100% 15-year, $9
I think
million budget.
there's a dual track thought process too, because we're hopeful with what Mr. Hansen's engaging in and some things that there's finally some cracks in what's going on up there. So we're hopeful, but you're right. I mean, that doesn't mean we couldn't engage at the same time and do a dual track thing and then nip that if.
Well, I mean, whatever that would be would have to be happening fast or be so far along where you could present that when you're asking for an extension, like, hey, this is happening.
Regardless, I mean, even if we had something going with a project, we may need a little bit of an extension just to buy some time for that project.
Sure. Okay. I just want to make sure that's high on the priority list. I feel like the 700 CDA is kind of a little bit of an overlay of the Riverdale Road, and kind of, letting the work on West Bench slide to chase that is kind of like, jumping over dollars to chase dimes.
Definitely don't think
bit.
that. We
Okay.
take West Bench very seriously.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cody. You have anything else, Mr. Worthing?
I don't just appreciate Cody and his dedication in getting that report put together for us. We enjoy working with Lewis and Young. They're a good consulting firm that helps us in many ways in our RDAs. Councilor Hansen brings up a good point about preparing and being prepared for that trigger date on the West Bench. Thank you.
Okay. Move on next to discretionary items for the RDA meeting. Any discretionary items? This time we would make a motion to adjourn back into the city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Move back into the city council meeting. Move in next to our closed executive session. This is pursuant to the provisions of Section 52-4-205 of the Open and Public Meetings Act for the purpose of strategy sessions to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation. So we'd need a motion to move into that session.
So moved.
If I could, there will actually be two subsections under that, so it would be subsections 1A and C. It's both litigation and some personnel matters. So
Character
there's two
things.
things, yes.
Okay. All right.
So moved again.
Do we have a second?
Hey,
Second.
do we have a motion on that?
Yeah. And a
We have a
second.
second. We got a motion and a second. Mrs. Manning, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Ellis.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous in favor. Now move into a closed session. Want to go upstairs? Go back upstairs then, and we'll do
Coming
that.
back down?
We'll come back down here to finish the city council meetings. So.